Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to another session of economy this week, wherein we are taking all the important economy related articles which have appeared in multiple newspapers and will be analyzing all of these articles. For today's video, we'll be covering the articles which have appeared in various newspapers from 3rd to 9th of December 2022. Let's begin the discussion. The first very important article. Iran has halted the imports of some of the commodities from India. Now, what is the point of discussion here? India and Iran have trade relations. That is the first important point you must remember. Although the oil trade, oil transactions, that is imports of the oil, have stopped from Iran, there are many other commodities which are traded between India and Iran. I'll show you the data in some time, don't worry. Now, in recent times, what has happened is, some of the commodities such as kiwi, which India imported from Iran, Government of India has put a halt on the imports. The reason for imposing a halt or imposing a ban on the import of kiwis from Iran was, Government of India cited that there are pest infestations from Iran which is entering through these imports into India, and citing this, Government of India said, okay, we will not be importing these kiwis into India, and the imports have been halted. Now, as a retaliation, again just basically what has been cited by many experts, as a retaliation, even Iran has stopped some of the imports of the commodities which they are doing from India, such as the rice imports as well as tea imports from India. Now, this is the third very important point. Iran has stopped the imports of rice as well as tea. Now, many of the experts say that this doesn't make any sense for a very simple reason. One, the demand for tea that is exported from India, the demand for such tea is very, very high in Iran. And second, when you talk about rice which is exported from India, it is price competitive. In simple terms, many of the other countries which export rice, the price of their exports is higher compared to India. So, Indian rice exports to Iran works out in favor of Iran. These are competitive, cheaper compared to other rice imports. So, it doesn't make any sense. That is the precise reason. Various experts have stated that there are two probable reasons why Iran is doing this, or why Iran is imposing the bans or stopping the imports from India. One, like I've already mentioned, because India stopped the imports of kiwis. That is one reason. And second, India has stopped importing crude oil from Iran, and before a couple of years, Iran was one of the major exporters of crude oil to India. In fact, India had opened a vostro account to pay for these particular oil imports from Iran. And since India has stopped importing crude oil, the vostro account has become useless because the payment is not being done for importing the crude oil now. So, Iran wants the other, that is India, to continue to import or restart importing of crude oil so that the payments can be done. So, these are the two very important or possible reasons which have been cited by various experts as a reason for Iran halting the imports from India. But if you go beyond this, if you just talk beyond this, the trade relations between India and Iran are important. Historically, there has been a trade relation that has existed, but because of the sanctions of Western countries such as USA, India has been forced to stop importing of the crude oil from Iran. Although certain exemptions were initially provided, those exemptions have been exhausted now, and as a result of this, we have stopped importing crude oil after the exhaustion of the exemptions. So, these are certain very important points regarding Iran halting the imports of certain commodities such as rice and tea from India. Now, based on this, I have given a MCQ. Basically a question on the trade relations between India and Iran. Consider the following regarding India-Iran trade relations. Indian exports to Iran have consistently increased in the last 5 years. Indian imports from Iran have consistently increased in the last 5 years. It's a trend-based question. Now, what has been the trend between India and Iran? What kind of goods we export, what kind of goods we import from Iran? Just look at certain important data here. If you just look at the last 4 to 5 years data, although the current financial year is not complete, hence you will not have the complete data for the current financial year. Half a financial year data has been provided. So the first statement is India's imports or India's exports to Iran have consistently increased. Second, Indian imports from Iran have consistently increased in the last 5 years. Is it true? Let's find out. First, what are the major Indian exports to Iran? Rice, tea, sugar, fresh fruits, etc. What are the imports that we do from Iran? Almonds, organic or inorganic chemicals, liquefied butane, propane, bitumen, dry dates, etc. Now look at the data here. How much has been the imports? How much has been the exports? In the last 5 years, has Indian exports to Iran consistently increased? The data is there right in front of you. No. Neither it has consistently increased, nor it has basically consistently decreased. Assuming the current financial year data will overtake the previous financial year data. Some of you will point out and say that, sir, but you can see that there is a consistent decline or there is a declining trend here. Assuming the current financial year will cross, which is expected, assuming the trade relations are mended now, right? Otherwise, if it doesn't change it, then definitely yes, there is a decline in India's exports to Iran. What about India's imports from Iran? Right, you will see that it is, first and foremost, it is not increasing. There is no consistent increase. What about the decrease? Initially for a couple of years, there is a decrease. In fact, abrupt decline has been observed. And then there is an increase. So this, right, the consistency is not there in terms of India's imports from Iran. The total trade, has it consistently increased or decreased? Again, there is no consistency there. For a couple of years, there is, right, basically a decline. But again, assuming this year it will cross the last year. Otherwise, if you exempt this current financial year, right, you can simply say, yes, sir, there is a decrease. Right, so these are certain important trade relation data between India and Iran. Please remember this can be asked as a trend-based question in the UPSC preliminary examination. Now, the first statement is wrong. Second statement is wrong. Right option for the question is D, neither 1 nor 2. But before going forward, just one very important update regarding this discussion. Very recently, India, that is Government of India, Ministry of Commerce, has asked the embassy in Iran to give an explanation regarding what is actually happening between India and Iran trade. What is the possible reason? Why is Iran halting these kind of exports from India? That explanation has been sought, is yet to be provided. So this is the first article. Second article, senior citizen rebate. Now the article basically discusses how much savings has the Ministry of Railways done by basically providing or by withdrawing the senior citizen rebate. Now what is this idea of a senior citizen rebate? Government of India provides lot of exemptions or rebates to lot of beneficiaries in the domestic market. One such rebate that was provided for senior citizen was that whenever senior citizens travelled through trains, booked the train ticket and travelled through trains, certain amount of a rebate was provided. That is, the tariffs which were imposed on them effectively were lower tariffs compared to when you and me would be booking a ticket, train ticket of course. Now, citing some of the issues during the pandemic, Government of India has withdrawn many of the other rebates or many of the other provisions. Along with that, even the senior citizen rebate has been withdrawn. And this article discusses how much savings has Government of India done with withdrawal of this particular rebate for the last couple of years. Now have a look at this. The railways, right, as per the data provided here, the railways has saved 2,560 crore rupees. I'm rounding off the number. 2,560 crore rupees in the last 2.5 years with the withdrawal of the rebate. Having said so, the article simply says this is a very, very small amount of a savings that the railways has been done or has been doing. In the last 2.5 years, starting from March 2020 till September 2022, it is just only around the 2,500 crore rupees. This should be much, much higher. That's a point number one. Second point, there has been a lot of debate or there has been a lot of discussion and demand for reintroduction of this rebate for senior citizens. Why? The post-pandemic scenario is that the number of senior citizens who are using the railways for traveling purposes has actually increased. The trend or the data shows that the senior citizens utilizing this mode of a transportation has increased, and now there is a demand that the government of India reintroduce the rebate to provide certain benefit to senior citizens. That's a second very important point. Third very important point, though there is a demand that this rebate has to be reintroduced, government of India is not in favor of reintroduction. The reason is simple. Government of India says, if I reintroduce the rebate like this, the expenses, the expenditure that government of India would be incurring, would be much, much higher or would be increasing. So in order to contain the expenses, contain the expenditure, the government of India as of now has registered the demand for the reintroduction of senior citizen rebate. So these are certain important points which have been provided in the context of government of India's decision to withdraw and to basically oppose the idea of a senior citizen rebate in the railways or transportation. Next important article is currency swap facility. Now what is this idea of a currency swap facility? Let me give a very simple example here. Imagine there are two countries, A and B. Country B is importing goods and services, has borrowed a lot of money, which simply means this country has a huge amount of repayment liability. It has a huge amount of repayment liability. And when a country has a huge amount of repayment liability, generally the country has to make a payment in terms of foreign currencies, not in terms of domestic currencies. Why? Most of the borrowings, most of the repayment liability, generally it is there in the context of foreign borrowings or foreign currencies. And that is the precise reason the country has to pay in terms of foreign currencies. Now what if I were to say that this country doesn't have sufficient amount of forex reserves? The country doesn't have sufficient amount of forex reserves. The amount of forex reserves that are held by the country B are not sufficient to repay the liability that the country owes to the rest of the world. In this situation, one way to address the issue of shortage of forex reserves is that country B will enter into a currency swap agreement or a currency swap facility with another country such as, let's say, country A. Now in the current situation, the same agreement is being discussed between the Reserve Bank of India and the Central Banker of Maldives, that is MMA, Maldives Monetary Authority. Generally, whenever such agreements are entered into, whenever swap facilities are provided for, it simply means the Central Banker of country A provides for a facility wherein country B's central banker can take loans or can simply take the currencies in terms of the currencies that they want to make the repayment to rest of the world. What do you mean by this? Let's say hypothetically, country B owes in terms of dollars payment to the rest of the world. Now, whenever such swap facilities are provided, country B can take these dollars from country A and use it to pay for the dollar repayment liability. Sir, is it always dollar? Not necessarily. I am explaining in terms of dollars because dollar is a universal currency. For example, whenever RBI provides for these kinds of swap agreements under the SARC currency or SARC currency swap framework, it provides this facility in terms of dollars, in terms of euro, and in terms of rupees. Generally, these are the currencies which are used by Reserve Bank of India to provide for the currency swap facility. Now, what is the advantage here? B will get access to, let's say, foreign currencies and use it to repay, use it to, right, basically address the repayment liabilities. Either it could be for borrowings, it could be for trade purposes, etc., etc., etc. So the pressure on the forex reserves, which was actually very high, forex reserves were getting depleted. Now the forex reserves can be added to with this assistance of currency swap facility. Now many of you will think, sir, what is the advantage for country A here? Why is country A entering into such type of agreements? One, generally when such facilities are provided, country A, which is providing the facility, will impose certain interest, will collect a certain interest on the amount that they have given. And second, this can be done in order to facilitate trade, in order to improve the image of the country, in order to improve the legitimacy of the country in terms of, let's say, a help or a friend in the global market. So these are some of the very important aspects related to the concept of currency swap facility. Now what is being discussed here? Reserve Bank of India has provided such facility to MMA, right? The swap agreement or the pact has been signed, under which 200 million currency, right, swap facility or $200 million as a facility have been provided by Reserve Bank of India to MMA, which can withdraw in multiple tranches as long as they have this particular facility or they do not cross the number of $200 million. And in the context of India, RBI, not for the first time, earlier also they have signed such agreement with Sri Lanka, other neighboring countries. So under this concept of swap pact or swap facility, Reserve Bank of India keeps on entering into such agreements because of SARC currency swap framework, which has come into operation, which has been introduced since 2012 in the market as such. So these are certain very, very important points regarding RBI providing the facility of swap pact to MMA. Now based on this, I have given a question here. Consider the following regarding SARC currency swap facility has been in force from 2010. Statement 1 is wrong. Why? It has been in force from 2012. India is the only country providing such swap facility. Again, this is wrong. Many other countries apart from India already have provided such swap facility. Third, RBI is allowed to provide the swaps only in rupees or dollars. This is also wrong. It could be in rupees, it could be in dollar, it could also be in euros. So third one is wrong. All the three are wrong. Which of the following or which of the above are incorrect? The right option will be option D, 1, 2 and 3. Let me go to the next article. After twice, government is looking to curb China fan imports. Now what is the argument here? Simple. India as such, I'm pretty sure you know that, imports a lot of goods and services. And these imports come in large volume as well as value from one of the neighboring countries, that is China. And India's trade balance or India's trade deficit with China has been much higher, has been ballooning, and that was one of the reasons. Why India stated that they do not want to join Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Point number 1. Second, whenever there is a huge amount of a trade deficit, it simply means there is a net outflow of dollars. Done? Because of the trade, whenever there is a trade deficit, there is a net outflow of dollars, which will basically lead to reduced forex reserves, which will put a lot of pressure on the rupee value in the forex market, etc., etc., etc. And not to forget, it will make India an import-dependent country. Now, there are essential imports. such as crude oil, which government of India, though they are trying, until unless we have viable alternatives in the domestic market, there is no option, will continue to import them. But there are also non-essential imports such as plastic toys, which government of India says which we can promote the production in the domestic market. So what is the need to import such commodities from rest of the world such as China? And citing this, government of India introduced an order by the name of QCO. Remember the term, Quality Control Order, QCO. Under the concept of QCO, any product that is a plastic toy, if it has to be sold in the Indian market or the domestic market, they will have to be certified by Bureau of Indian Standards, BIS. They are supposed to get a certification approval from the BIS. Now, because of this quality control order, the imports of the plastic toys, it is said, has actually come down. There is a huge decline in the value of the plastic toys which were imported into India, specifically coming from China. Now, using the same methodology, Government of India wants to target the fan imports. Government of India wants to target the fan imports, and in the process, one, reduce the value of imports which are coming into India, and second, promote more market share or promote the domestic production. Because if the imports automatically come down, there is more market space that is available for the domestic manufacturers to produce and sell it in the market. So citing this, article says that Government of India might be targeting the imports of the fans specifically coming from China into India, and they might take the route that they have taken earlier to reduce the import dependence or the imports of plastic toys. But having said so, various other experts have stated that the domestic market producers itself, that is the producers in the domestic market, do not like Government of India using such measures to reduce the imports. Why? When the imports will come down, it will provide more market share for the domestic producers. They should be happy with this. Then why are they opposing or why are they concerned about such measures taken by the government? The argument is that when Government of India will implement a policy such as quality control order, wherein the toys will have to meet certain specifications, it might so happen that even the domestic manufacturers might not be in a position to meet those specifications. Generally, it has been seen that even the domestic manufacturers are not so much focused upon the quality of the products. And because they have not invested in producing quality goods, quality output, they might find it very hard or very difficult to meet the quality standards which are set up by the government. Hence, their share in the market rather than increasing might be affected in an opposite way. So generally it has been found these are opposing such policy measures of the government to reduce the imports from the Western or let's say from the foreign markets. So these are certain important points regarding the import of toys, fans into India. Apart from this, a lot of data has been provided. Please don't by heart the data. For example, they will tell you the imports of the commodities such as electricity smart meters is $3.1 million. $3.1 million. It has fallen down to $1.3 million. Out of it, 1.3 million comes from China, etc., etc. All of this data you don't have to by heart. Why? By the time you write the exam, the data would be completely different, and UPSC will not ask you this kind of a data. Done. So these are certain important points regarding Government of India's policies to target the imports. Next one, the government very recently has announced it is going to extend the coverage of the sectors under RoDTEP scheme. Now what is this? In the headline itself, you can find that the scheme has been extended to cover chemicals, pharma, iron and steel. But what is the basic logic here? First and foremost, understand the sequence here. Government of India earlier had MEIS scheme, merchandise exports from India scheme. And what government has done is, because the MEIS scheme was violating the WTO provisions, it has withdrawn MEI scheme and has introduced a new scheme, RoDTEP, remission of duties and taxes on exported products. And when this particular RoDTEP scheme was implemented, based on the recommendations of a GK Pillai committee, government decided it would be providing refunds or remissions of various embedded taxes to an extent of somewhere in the range of 0.3% to just over 4% on different commodities which are exported from India. The argument was very simple. These embedded taxes are not refunded. These are not provided back to the manufacturer or exporter. And as a result of this, these taxes are exported to international market. So we want to increase the export competitiveness. We want to reduce the burden of embedded taxes on the market price of the exports. And that is a precise reason the government has introduced the remission of duties and taxes at the local, central, state level, which were not covered earlier under any of the scheme under RoDTEP scheme. And as a result of this, we were able to cover 8,731 export items and provide remission of duties and taxes on these products. Fourth very important point. Initially, to begin with, Government of India did not cover chemicals, pharmaceuticals, iron and steel industries. And the reason that was given was the government stated some of these particular sectors will be excluded because they have huge amount of exports which are going from India to rest of the world. These are already exporting more and more, hence we do not need to provide any kind of an assistance. Now this is a background story. Now many of you will keep on thinking, sir, if this was the situation, why there is a sudden change in the stance of the government? What has happened? Why Government of India now says, okay then, we are going to cover all of these within the RoDTEP scheme. The reason is very simple. First one, in the last couple of months, India's exports to the international market have been affected. That's the first point. Second, is it going to improve in the coming days? Not necessarily, because there are concerns regarding recessions that could be taking place in the two very important markets for India. One is European market and the second one is American market. Third, the Government of India now says, we have implemented RoDTEP scheme and we have allocated certain amount of funds under the RoDTEP scheme. And because the exports have not been increasing at the pace that we expected, we have certain amount of savings out of the allocated funds. So government says, when the savings are there, the money is allocated, but we are unable to give these funds to the exporters. Why not utilize these savings in covering more exported or more of these exports and promote these exports to the international market? And this has been the precise reason why Government of India now says RoDTEP will be extended to cover these sectors. But having said so, please remember this. This extension that has been announced by the government is not till perpetuity, is not right without any condition. Government says this will be applicable till the end of September 2023. And thereafter we will decide whether should we extend it or just restrict it to earlier goods. So these are certain very important points. As a result of this, remember the number of the export items which will be covered now. Earlier it was 8,731 export items. Now it has been extended to cover 10,342 export items. So these are certain very important points regarding extension or expansion of RoDTEP scheme. Now based on this, I have given a question. Which of the following are refunded or remitted back under RoDTEP scheme? VAT on fuel used for transportation, yes, it is provided. Mandi taxes, if there are any paid, yes. Duty on the electricity, again, yes. 1, 2 and 3 are basically remitted back under the RoDTEP scheme. Hence, the right option for the question will be option D, 1, 2 and 3. Let me go to the next article. The Discoms total financial year 22 AT&C losses have come down to 17%. Now what is this? Discoms first and foremost stand for the distribution companies. I'll write it here. Distribution companies. What are these distribution companies? Most of the distribution companies are owned by the state government, and these distribution companies will purchase electricity and supply it to the consumers, that is household, commercial, etc., and impose and collect the bills from the consumers. So these are in short called as Discoms. And because of various issues, the financial position of the Discoms has been very, very weak for over a decade in India now. For example, if you read the UDAY documents, Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana documents, in a span of the 10 years, the losses which were incurred by the Discoms have ballooned by more than 11,000 crore rupees to more than 70,000 crore rupees. The debt of the Discoms have ballooned. And now to address the issue of distress in the Discoms, Government of India introduced Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana, which has been withdrawn because the tenure of the scheme is over. Under Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana, the Government of India asked the state governments to implement certain policies so that 1. Aggregate technical and commercial losses, AT&C losses of the distribution companies would be decreasing, and second one, the gap between ARR and ACS would also be lowered, that is 0. And if both of these reforms are implemented, for example, under UDAY Yojana, these were not met, the states were not able to meet the targets. And that is the precise reason Government of India has basically wound up Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana, and in place of UDAY has implemented another scheme by the name of Revamped Distribution Sector Scheme. And under the Revamped Distribution Sector Scheme, Government of India says we will give the reduction in the ACS ARR, the gap between them, as a target, and the AT&C losses reduction also have been given the target. And many of you will simply say, sir, then what is the difference between UDAY and RDSS? Under UDAY also the same targets were given, that is to reduce the gap and reduce AT&C, and the same gaps are provided under RDSS. The simple difference is that now if the states meet those targets, only then whatever incentives are provided will be given by the central government. In simple terms, the incentives or the assistance is conditional. Only when the states will meet the targets, then the assistance or the incentives are provided. Now, what is the update here? 1. The AT&C losses, aggregate technical and commercial losses, have reduced from 22% a year earlier to 17% for the current year, that is for the previous financial year 21 and 22. That is one very important piece of information that you need to observe. And second, it's not just that the AT&C losses has come down. It has been found that even the gap between average cost of supply and average revenue realized, the gap also has come down. And always remember this, AT&C losses and the gap between ARR and ACS are the two very important performance level indicators or performance linked indicators for the distribution companies. And as per the data that is provided here, the ACS and ARR gap has a decline from 0.69 rupees per kilowatt hour in the financial year 21 to 0.22 per kilowatt hour in the fiscal year 2022. Now, many of you will keep on asking me, sir, what do you mean by this? Right? What is this ACS and ARR gap? Simple. A distribution company will purchase electricity and supply electricity. Supply, sell, whatever it is. A distribution company will purchase and supply electricity to me, to you, to companies, etc. And whenever they purchase and supply electricity, they would incur expenditure. They would simply incur lot of expenses or expenditure. The per unit, for supplying per unit of electricity, how much is the expenditure incurred by the Discoms? It is called as average cost of supply, ACS. And when they supply electricity to me, you, etc., they will impose and collect tariffs from us. And that tariff is on an average, which is collected, is called as average revenue realized, ARR. And if you look at basics of economics, the cost at which you should supply should be greater than, the cost at which you should supply should be lower than the cost which you will collect, the tariff or the revenue that you will collect. But historically, in the context of India, the average cost of supply has been higher compared to the average revenue realized, which means by supplying 1 unit of electricity, the Discom is already having lower recoveries or incurring losses. And that is the precise reason under many of the schemes, the target is to reduce the gap between ARR and ACS. And if you do that, automatically the AT&C losses would also be lower, which will improve the financial position of the distribution companies. So these are certain important points regarding the situation of the distribution companies in the electricity sector. The next article is regarding gold ATMs. For the first time ever in India, a company in Hyderabad has set up a gold ATM, and the name of the company is a Gold Sikka. Please remember the name, can be asked in UPSC preliminary examination. Now, what is this idea of a gold ATM? Just like you have an ATM card, that is a debit card, or you have a credit card. Imagine you have a debit card, you can go to an ATM and withdraw the money from your bank account. I have a debit card, I can go to an ATM, provide the details of the account, that is PIN, etc., and withdraw the money from the ATM machine. In the same way, imagine you have a debit or credit card. Now you can walk into the ATM, right? For example, you can see the picture here. This is a gold ATM. You can walk into this ATM and instead of withdrawing money, you can purchase gold. I repeat, instead of withdrawing money, you can purchase a gold of 999 purity from these gold ATMs. And such a system for the first time ever has been set up in India. It's not a new system in the global market, because as the article says that there are many other countries such as Germany, right, UAE, etc., where this kind of a concept is already present. But in case of India, this is the first such attempt where gold ATMs have been set up. Now, what are the other features of the gold ATM? First, have a look at this. In the gold ATM, pre-packaged gold will be provided to you whenever you purchase. That is, pre-packaged tamper-proof packages are provided. First. Second, how much gold or what kind of gold can you purchase from the ATM machine? You can purchase the gold in the denominations ranging 0.5 grams, half a gram, 1 gram, 2 gram, 5 gram, 10 gram, 20, 50 to 100 grams. Of course, after 5 grams, it is simply a multiple, right? It is a multiple of, right, the 5 grams that you can purchase or you can withdraw from such ATM machines. The first ATM machine has been set up already. Now, the company Gold Sikka says that we are thinking of expanding it. We are thinking of expanding the coverage to other areas as well. Now, apart from this, right, next very important point is the reason, right, as per the articles or as per the statements given by the owners, the reason that they have started with this gold ATM, because there are certain concerns which have been raised. For example, will there be a demand for such buying and selling of the gold? The owners of this company have stated that they have conducted the research and they have found that generally people who want to purchase gold, and believe me when I say this, in India, there's a huge demand for such buying of the gold. Again, gold. So there is a research which has been conducted and the owners say that the buyers are generally apprehensive about going to the shop always, trying to search for the gold at the best prices where they can purchase. And that's a precise reason they say that, or they believe that there is always a demand for such purchasing of gold in the market. Next very important point, what about the prices then? Will the prices keep on changing? Of course, the price of the gold, so because it's so volatile in the sense in real time the price of the gold will keep on changing. The machine will be connected with the internet and whatever is the latest pricing, automatically the prices would change in the machine as well. So these are certain very important points regarding the concept of the gold ATM, which has been started very recently for the first time in India. Now the next article, NPCI has extended the cap on UPI facilities or the provision of UPI transactions on these companies. That is the companies which are called as third-party application providers. Now what is the argument here? In case of India, there are multiple companies which will provide the facilities of third-party application provider. What do you mean by this? Whenever you want to conduct a transaction, you have a PhonePe, you have a Google Pay, etc. But apart from PhonePe, Google Pay, there are many other companies which are providing the same kind of services to you. That is, providing a transaction using a UPI. But it has been found that the PhonePe and Google Pay account for more than 81% of the market share in India. In simple terms, there are two companies which account for more than 4/5 of the total UPI transactions which are conducted in India. So Reserve Bank of India, right? Reserve Bank of India has raised concern regarding this, and even NPCI, National Payments Corporation of India, has very recently raised concern regarding the same thing. And to address this issue of concentration of most of the transactions, to allow for free flow of other companies or participation of other companies and promote the growth of UPI based transactions in the domestic market, NPCI earlier proposed a cap of 30% of the transactions. I understand this. Earlier, the NPCI proposed a cap of 30% of volume of transactions. What do you mean by this? In a particular month, Google Pay or PhonePe will be allowed to transact or will be allowed to facilitate only 30% of the transactions in the market. Beyond that, they will not be allowed to facilitate the transactions using the UPI. But many of these companies, specifically led by Google Pay as well as PhonePe, opposed this particular cap. Their argument was, we cannot simply ask our customers, maybe once it is implemented, we cannot ask our customers not to do the transactions because beyond this, we will not be able to provide the facility to all of them. Rather than promoting UPI based transactions, what this might do is hinder the growth in the UPI transactions. What do you mean by this? For example, imagine you are the PhonePe company, right? You are the PhonePe company, and I am one of the people who is using the PhonePe app. I am trying to conduct a UPI based transaction. You already have met your quota of 30% transactions in this month. Now you will have to reject my transaction. You will have to simply say, sorry, we will not be able to provide the facility of UPI based transaction, which might hinder the growth of the business for you. So citing this, many of these companies, especially PhonePe, oppose the cap, UPI cap of 30% monthly transaction or 30% of the total transactions. And NPCI, not RBI, NPCI, citing many other issues. That is, NPCI is saying that there is still a focus, a lot of potential for the UPI to grow, right, etc. Now has stated that the deadline for implementation of this 30% cap on the UPI transactions will be extended until December 31st, 2024. In simple terms, NPCI says we are going to bring in this particular facility of a cap, but not today, right, but from December 31st, 2024. And apart from this, you can see the data here. 47% is owned by PhonePe, 34% is owned by Google Pay. And apart from this, we have Amazon Pay, WhatsApp Pay, Paytm, etc., which hardly account for around 18 to 19% of the total UPI transactions. So these are certain important points regarding NPCI cap on the UPI transactions. The last article for the day, the monetary policy has been announced by Reserve Bank of India. What are the important changes which have been announced? First one, the repo rate has been increased, but unlike earlier situations where generally the repo rate was increased at 50 basis points every policy, that is, the Reserve Bank of India has kept on increasing the repo rate by 0.5%, 50 basis points in the last couple of the announcements. Now Reserve Bank of India says we will not be increasing it by 50 basis points, rather we will be increasing the repo rate but by 35 basis points, which means what? rather than increasing at 50 basis points, if they are increasing it by 35 basis points, one point is very clear, RBI is still concerned about inflation rate. RBI is still concerned about inflation rate. Second, having said so, the Monetary Policy Committee has clearly stated the worst of inflation is over. The worst of inflation is behind us. We are still concerned about inflation, but the problem of inflation is not as big as today compared to what it was in the earlier months. And that is the precise reason RBI, though to address the issue of inflation, has not increased the repo rate by a larger margin, has increased by a smaller margin comparatively by 35 basis points. That's the first very, very important point you need to make a note of. Second, the Reserve Bank of India, again worried about international, let's say, issues as well as the domestic issues, etc., has revamped or readjusted the GDP growth estimate for the current financial year. From earlier 7% estimate, now it has been revamped or brought down to 6.8%. That's the second point. Again, should you remember all this data? Not necessarily. UPSC will not ask you this, one. And second, come after 2 months or 3 months, again the data would be different. Third very important point here. There is a system which has been launched, Bharat Bill Payment Systems, BBPS, Bharat Bill Payment Systems. Under the Bharat Bill Payment System, the recurring payments were covered under this, and automatic debits or automatic payments were provided of those customers who were part or who opted for Bharat Bill Payment Systems. Now, rather than only covering the recurring payments, RBI says we will extend it to cover even the non-recurring payments, such as education fees, such as certain types of taxes, etc. So that the scope of BBPS will be expanded. We are going to cover more and more transactions now. Second, another very important point, in order to promote e-commerce and, let's say, buying of the shares, debentures, etc. from the market. Again, some of the types of transactions which will be facilitated now is RBI says we will introduce a new methodology where we are going to introduce a concept of single block and multiple debits. Single block and multiple debits. A new concept which RBI proposes will be introduced and which will facilitate e-commerce, which will facilitate investments in the market, etc., etc., etc. Now, what is the idea of a single block and multiple debits? Let me give you a very simple example. Imagine you want to sell a product to me and I've shown interest in that. I will order the product. You will deliver the product, you will come to my home to deliver it, and now I say I want to cancel the order. Right? Or in many cases, for example, you want to book a tour, you want to book a hotel or a restaurant after 1 week, 2 weeks, etc. You want them to hold the room for a certain number of days, but they say, sir, sorry, it is not possible, please provide us a guarantee that you will come to us. In the same way, whenever trades are done, whenever transactions are done, buying and selling is done. Now, RBI says we'll introduce a new concept of single block multiple debits. For example, imagine I will order for a product from your, right? You are a supplier, from you I'll order the product and the price of the product is 5,000 rupees. Under the concept of this, the 5,000 rupees from my account will be frozen. I will not be allowed to use that 5,000 rupees for anything else. Once the good is delivered, the 5,000 rupees automatically will be released and paid to you. That is the concept of single block multiple debit, which will facilitate buying and selling, which will facilitate investment in the market, etc. So these are the two very important new concepts or the expansion of the earlier concepts which RBI has announced in the latest monetary policy. So these are the various articles as well as the questions related to articles which have appeared from the 3rd December to 9th of December 2022. If you like the initiative, hit the like button, provide your valuable comments in the section below, and if you are yet to subscribe to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS, kindly do it. Thank you. Have a great day.